Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, aka Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with some more Harn. In today's video, we're going to be touching on the Harn magic, right? The magic user, the spell caster. We're going to be talking about how to make a spellcaster character, not in detail because it's the same as regular characters with just a little bit of a nuanced change, and that's what we'll talk about. Plus, we'll talk about learning spells, creating spells, but most importantly, we're going to talk about role playing or philosophy and how they could impact your game or how they might benefit your game or whatever. Remember that I am new to Harn. I do not have any experience running Harn. I am in the process over the last few weeks of reading and absorbing Harn material, and I'm taking this opportunity to share it with you on a overall, on a very high level. Basically, the general concepts, not your specific campaign, not my specific campaign, just an overview of what you might see if you pick up Harn yourself. But having said that, I'm also going to interject my own personal commentary, so this video might be a little long. Most of my videos have been about an hour per subject. You can always play it at double speed. And my Harn is not necessarily going to be the same as your Harn, because Harn is like a foundation for a campaign. It gives you the world, the politics, the personalities, the creatures, and stuff like that. And then it gives you room to create your own personal Harn where you can create your own adventures, your own campaign. You can have it go in any direction you want. Plus, Harn can be played using almost any role-playing system. So if you're familiar with, I don't know, RuneQuest, you can use that in Harn. If you are familiar with Rolemaster, you can use that in Harn, or basically any role-playing game you have. Even D&D 5th edition can be played in Harn. I think it was originally designed to be very compatible with D&D because it's not real, it's rule agnostic is what they say. But due to pressure from the fans, Columbia Games has created their own rule set called Harnmaster, and that's what we're talking about. I'm talking about Harnmaster, the game mechanics, the rules, to be used in Harnworld, which is the campaign setting. They're extremely compatible, of course, right? And so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the magic. Now, before we get started, I do want to say this. This is a recent announcement, and this is in the middle of all my videos, and so I'll probably have to make a separate video for this. But I've been contacted by Columbia Games to do some book reviews, and there's a potential interview with Grant. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Danglish? Something like that. I'm sure I'm butchering it, and I apologize, Grant. But so look for a video like that in the future. I'm sure I'll be putting out an announcement video if we come up with a date and a time. I'll probably want to do that live so that we can have an audience that comes on and can also add additional questions. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about magic. Now we're looking at this is the Harnmaster 3rd edition. It's actually version 3.01. um, of the Harnmaster rulebook. Now, part of the character chapter on the 25th page of the character chapter, you have this thing called the Shek-Pvar, right? The Shek-Pvar are belong to one of 6 ancient and esoteric suborders. Okay, so they're convocations. Okay. I do a lot of comparison to Dungeons and Dragons because I know a lot of people are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. Not everyone has played Rolemaster. Not everyone has played the Fantasy Trip or anything. So I try to relate it to the largest audience, which is probably D&D players. Okay, so think of the Shek-Pvar as that's a wizard organization or wizard like an arcane lore college, like a college of wizards. And they break it down into 6 convocations. So think of it like, I don't know, different elements like earth, wind, and fire. But also, they break it down not just to the elements, but other aspects as well, like spirit and knowledge. Okay, so these are the convocations right here. Say you got Leonvi. They specialize in wind, magnification, and visual illusions. Pla, they fire, okay, and movement. And then you got Jamorvi, which is weapon creation. It's kind of like I think they call it the element of metal, right? And then, but basically, that's what I'm trying to say. You've got, what do they got there? 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. It says there's 7 of them. That's the convocations. And it's kind of like as a wizard character, you will choose one convocation to become proficient with or attuned with. And as you develop that skill, each convocation has its own skill. So, and that's what you're looking at right here, is the convocation skill base, right? So they all use a double aura, every one of them. So think of your aura stat on your character sheet as your mana, your magic. That is your magical prowess. But each of the convocations use a different third stat that you remember you're doing an average. You do the average of the 3. So the most important stat is aura, obviously, because it's doubled. And then your other stat. So like intelligence is not a wizard stat. I mean, it is, but only the Savoria wizard stat. And it's for divination and memory suppression, etc., etc. But like weapon creation, strength. So that wizard's going to have a good strength, or should, if he wants to have a good skill with his convocation. Now, again, just like sword fighting and farming and locksmithing, every one of those are affected by different sun signs. The sun signs also affect the various convocations. Now, you'll see here that there are only 6 convocations because there is one more right there at the bottom one. It's called neutral. Neutral is it's open to everybody, if that makes sense. Now remember, usually on the sidebar of their rules, 99% of the time, you get examples or explanations of what they mean. And this right here is showing a character joining a chantry. Okay, chantries are the physical location of where the school is. So let's say you're in a convocation of X, Y, and Z, and you want to go to school somewhere, right? Or you want to go to school for that convocation. You would have to find a chantry for that convocation. Go there, and they will teach you fire magic or whatever it is that you want to learn. And so a wizard is usually associated with a chantry. That's his school. That's where he learned. Um, and it does require a die roll to be accepted, right? And this is what they're talking about here. The more quality that the chantry has, or the size of the chantry, it might be a large college, it's going to be harder and harder to get into. So you use your your chantry skill or convocation skill bonus, and that would be determined down here, multiplied by a certain amount, and that's what you have to roll less than on percentile dice. So if you have a 10, which is pretty poor for a wizard, I would think, but let's say you have a 10 and you're trying to get into the easiest chantry, the worst chantry, the smallest chantry, you have to you have to roll a 60 or less, right? But if you're trying to get into the most prestigious, the richest, the with all the best archmages, then you would have to roll a 20 or less. Shek-Pvar in the Harnmaster rulebook only has 2 pages, and none of them are spells, right? They don't talk about any kind of spells in the Harnmaster rulebook. You have to go to Harnmaster Magic and get that information. So if you want to have a wizard, or if you want to allow wizards in your campaign, you do need to pick up the Harnmaster Magic, which I'm going to be showing you here in just a second. Okay, so we got the Chantry approval, and then we have the Chantry OMLs, which is, remember, that's the opening mastery level. And you can see here that if your quality improved, they just flipped the chart. But if your quality improves, your opening mastery level is going to be better. So remember when you have the 10, right? If he gets into this poor quality chantry, he'll come out with a convocation skill of 20%. But if he made it into the top quality, top tier, he'd come out with a mastery level of 40. Okay, with his convocation. And then a different mastery level with his neutral skill. Because remember, everyone can do neutral. Okay, and Shek-Pvar PCs begin play as a Satya Mavari. That's an apprentice. That's basically a beginning wizard. You're nothing super special. You have to eventually gradually get into the magic. Okay, and then you got the Satya Mavari occupational skills, just like being a miner or an archer or any other of those professions. You get all, which is all of these skills, which is there's 3. You get script, folklore, and mathematics. Okay, script is the ability to read and write. Okay, it's good to know that if you're a wizard, right? And then depending on your convocation, you'll pick up a few more occupational skills. Now, if I just want to point something out, you do not see any weapon skills. So you don't see dagger, you don't see club, you don't see quarterstaff or sword or spear or longbow, you see 0 weapon skills. Now, there is weapon craft, but that's making and repairing weapons. That's not using weapons. But then you go to optional skills. Just like every character, you get 5 option points. There's no change. It's the same. And then you can spend your 5 option points to improve these open skills. Each skill can be opened by expending 1 OP. So let's say you pick dagger, right? Because you want to learn how to fight with a dagger. You spend 1 point and you'll get dagger at rank 3, right? So it'll jump it right away. But then you can spend 1 additional point and bring it from 3 to 4. A second improvement of the same skill would cost 2 more points. And it says you can never expend option points to improve your 2 open CMLs. Okay, what this is saying here on the important is those 5 option points. You cannot use those 5 option points to improve your convocation or your neutral. Can't do that. And you can't spend an option point to learn a new convocation. Can't do that. You can only improve like normal skills like unarmed or staff. Looks like staff's probably the best one. There is sling, so you could pick any of those up. And as always, if you and your game master decide that you want to allow another skill to be opened, you could do that. You know, that's up to you and your game master, but that's not it like any game, it's your game master's game. Let him decide how you're going to spend your points, right? Okay, and then you got your spells. Now, Satya Mavari apprentices start play with a selection of primary convocations and neutral spells learned during apprenticeship. And then you have spell option points equal to your aura. You learn 2 neutral spells. It's called Focus and Dispel. And they're taught to everybody. And these are open for free. All convocation spells cost 1 OP per level. So if it's a 3rd level, it costs 3. But neutral spells cost 2 OP per level. So it's harder to learn neutral because it's not part of your specialty. And then right here, for detailed spell descriptions, see Harnmaster Magic. So you'd have to go there and do that. Okay, and that's pretty much it. And then you'd be done with your character, right? You just spend points and get your spells. Not exactly. This is kind of the basics to get your DMs like mouth watering about the magic system. So let me jump to Harn Magic, and then we can dig a little bit deeper into who the Shek-Pvar are and maybe show a spell or 2 off. All right, so here is Harnmaster Magic. Now I skipped a few pages or 1 page because it repeated the exact same things. But here you go. Here's your convocations. It's going to reiterate what you saw in Harnmaster. But you're going to see the convocations, the pronunciation guide, what they really, like a bigger explanation of what they really stand for. And then this is the Pavaric wheel, which shows all the convocations. Okay, great. Moving on. Okay, and then it shows the Mavari or the apprentice, and then the Satya Mavari is the journeyman. So the previous book said that you begin play as a journeyman because those option points that you spent to learn spells and skills was done when you were an apprentice. And now you leave apprenticeship and enter the journeyman, which means you're now out and about in the world. So when they reach a certain level of competence, they're expected to go out and gather treasures, and bring them back to the chantry, right? You basically have a monthly due, because remember, during character creation, you didn't have to spend any money. They housed you and they fed you and they taught you, but you didn't earn any money or anything. And then at the end of the time, now you have to repay them. So think of it like a student loan, right? Now that you are out in the world, they expect you to pay them back. And that's the whole reason why they taught you in the first place. It was an agreement that you have to agree to. It's an agreement that once you're done training, you will go out in the world, earn money, and bring it back, and hopefully bring back treasure. Magical in nature, of course. Okay, and then the better you do at that, the better you can continue to use the chantry. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you need to learn new spells, if you need to review the library or discuss with your instructors about some quest you're on, you would have access to them. They would be good contacts for you. Okay. We're going to skip over. I think this is kind of cool what they're talking about, the Grand Master. To become a Grand Master of a chantry, or I should say of a convocation, the 6 other Grand Masters have to agree that you're a Grand Master. So you'll have to prove yourself to them. And they go into detail on that. It talks about chantries. The elite Brawn don't have to pay rent. That's good. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about casting spells, and during a combat round. It works exactly like the cleric, right? The cleric is doing a ritual, but as far as I'm concerned, they're both spells. They both function exactly the same, except the cleric rules as written, which is raw Harnmaster, says that a cleric can just cast the spell. If he knows it, he can cast it. Where the wizard expends fatigue to cast spells. Okay, so here we go. We got runs on initiative rating. You have a skill, you have initiative, spellfire timing. Spells always, and this is with rituals or with convocations, they always happen at the end of the whole turn, the whole round, right? There's a I don't want to be confusing, but I personally think that a turn is larger than a round, but that's not the way it is. Each character gets their turn once, and this is the way it's written. Each character gets their turn and once everybody has finished their turn, that is the end of the round. Okay, so it's like a boxing round. They don't call it a boxing turn, right? So that elapsed amount of time, which could be around 10 seconds, right? But they try to avoid assigning a time to a round because some of them can be shorter, some of them can be longer. It doesn't matter, right? That It's not a set like 5 rounds is 50 seconds. No, it's not like that. But having said that, in combat, if you have a spellcaster and they have a spell that takes anywhere from 1 to 9 seconds, it will fire. They call it. It'll, you know, go off. It'll go into effect. Not at the end of their turn, but at the end of the round. Okay, so as a wizard, I would take what's called an esoteric action, which is what they call anything that is kind of wizardry, praying, chanting, whatever. So you make this esoteric action and then you sit on your thumbs. You just wait. And everyone gets a chance to do their turn. And then at the end of everybody's turn, your spell goes off. If your spell takes 10 seconds or more to cast, they're showing 10 to 19 seconds, then it will happen at the end of the next round. Because you'll have to spend more time doing your esoteric action. So I'm a fighter, and this is just me throwing in my commentary. I'm a fighter, and I see a spellcaster starting to cast a spell. Everybody and their brother knows this is happening. So there's something called interruptions down here at the bottom. I can say, crap, he's casting a spell. Everybody run up there and hit him hard with your sword, right? And then you run up there and bah, 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 trying to prevent him from getting that spell off. Even if you don't know what it is. Competing spell fires. Let's say you got 2 spell casters. This guy, it's his turn. He starts his spell. It takes 9 seconds or less. So his is going to go off at the end of the turn. And this guy says, okay, I'm going to cast a spell too. I also have 1 to 9 seconds. So mine's going to go off at the end of the turn. So at the end of the turn, they don't go off simultaneously. You break the tie by the spell with the shortest casting time goes first. If still tied, whoever got the best spell roll, because when you cast a spell, you have to roll a success level using your convocation mastery level. And then whoever got the best success level, not the best die roll. You have marginal success, critical success. If one person got a marginal success and the other person got a marginal success, no matter what the numbers are, they would be the same. And then if still tied, then whoever has the best initiative rating, and if that's still a tie, roll a die. Now, spells that are stored, let's say you've got a staff that holds a number of spells and you want to just launch one out of your staff, you can, and that only takes a second, and it doesn't have a casting time. Okay. Now, interruptions. There's 2 types of interruptions. There's minor interruptions and severe interruptions. We don't really need to get into all of this, but a minor interruption is fairly minor. I mean, it is almost, I wouldn't even consider it an interruption, pretty much. In D&D terms, it is not an interruption. But in Harnmaster, it is an interruption. So, a near miss by an arrow. So, I shoot an arrow and it goes by your head, right? That could interrupt you. Where in D&D, you have to take a number of, like in D&D, you have to take damage Well, first of all, your spell's not even going to be interrupted. You're going to cast your spell, and only if you're concentrating on the spell, someone could attack you, has to cause damage, and once they cause damage, you get a saving throw to maintain concentration. Not like that. Okay, so this arrow misses, you might lose concentration, or you might be interrupted. A loud noise, right? So somebody screaming at you might cause you to lose concentration, or they don't call it, they interrupt your casting. So all that minor interruptions do, and this is really up to the GM discretion, is it doesn't stop you from casting. It just gives you a minus on your skill roll. Remember that skill roll you had to perform to cast the spell? Or you may terminate voluntarily. So let's say this arrow flies by and your game master is being a dick, and he says that's a minus 30. All right? That's horrible, right? But you only started with a 40. Remember that apprentice? He only had a 40. So now he's down to 10%. He says, fuck this. I'm not going to make that attempt. Okay. So he could just terminate voluntarily. Now, a severe interruption always terminates spell casting. These include physical abuse. Okay, like having an arm severed or being knocked down. It's a range of from being knocked down all the way up to having a limb severed. So a regular strike would normally fall under severe interruptions. Okay, all that's great. We've got rid of the mechanics of the Shek-Pvar, other than showing you some spells, and that's at the end. Now we're going to talk a little bit about role playing. Okay, so now remember, I'm not the master of all things Harn, so don't come at me, bro. Yeah, so if I say something wrong or misleading or incorrect, just put it in the comments. Let me know. I'd be glad to hear what you have to say. And that's great. I appreciate all the help I can get. But from what I understand is the Wizards College is very secretive. Not in the fact that they're wizards. Like they'll walk into a city and say, "I'm a wizard and you can't do anything about it." That's not a problem. Okay? They're not ashamed of being wizards, right? That's not the secretive part that I'm talking about. They won't teach you anything. They won't share any of their knowledge with you. It is completely restricted to other Shek-Pvar. You have to be in the chantry or in their college for them to even talk to you. Not even talk to you, but share any information with you. Now that's a liberal. That's liberal. They might share information with you, if it's not detrimental to them, or if the benefit they're going to receive from you by telling you this outweighs the backlash that they're going to receive by sharing knowledge with a non-wizard, they might tell you at that point. So they live by a Pavaric code, and let's look at it. Bring not the scorn of the Kavikir upon their brothers. Okay, the Kavikir are normies. Okay, so if you're not a wizard, you're a normie, right? And they don't want you to bring the scorn of the normies upon their brothers. So basically, don't do something that's going to bring shame to the wizards, because they're already on a tenuous teeter-totter with the religious sects, the religious gods and the clerics and the priesthood and stuff like that already look at magic as kind of being blasphemous or witchcraft a little bit. So, but it's not. They're not at odds, or they're not hostile, but they know that there's a little animosity there. Plus, they don't want you to be running around like, in the middle of a city, some street urchin picks your pocket, and then you cast a fireball and blow him up. They don't want you to do that. They want you to be a civil, law-abiding citizen. Don't bring shame. They say scorn, but what they mean by that is shame to their brothers. That means all the other wizards, making the wizards look bad. And they say, don't make yourself more important than the rest of the wizards. Do not elevate yourself above all else, right? Okay, part 2 is keep sacred and free from harm thy house of lore. So what they're saying is your house of lore is your head. It's your brain. Keep it free from harm. That's obviously don't die. And keep it sacred, which means don't share that information with anybody. And don't forget that you have to tithe a portion of your arcane treasure back to the chantry. Spread not thy lore. Don't talk, right? Even among thy brothers. So if there's another wizard, don't share any knowledge with him unless you get this, unless your chantry allows it, your high priest, your archmage or whatever. If he says, okay, share that information, then share it. Don't share it. Basically, you got to be very private about your information. You were taught that information for a reason. And he wasn't taught this information for a reason. So don't go sharing your information with them unless you have permission to do so. And then the last one is succor not a renegade. Okay, so we'll be talking about the renegades here in just a second. But basically, once a wizard is declared a renegade, you have nothing to do with them. You cannot help them, or what do they call it? Aid and abet a criminal. Strike him down with thy power, else summon brothers to thine aid. So, if you find a renegade, it's your duty to kill him. If you can't kill him, or if you feel he's too powerful, then seek out your chantry, your archmages, and ask them for help to kill him. So renegades are definitely on their S list. Okay, so a mage who uses magic to harm the Kvikir, or normies, or who brings a house of lore, a chantry, into disrepute, will be opposed by other Shek-Pvar, either because they are ethically hostile or because they believe the organization is threatened by too much visibility. And if 6 or more masters agree, a mage can be declared a renegade. So, as a game master, I'm not going to go too much further on this, but as a game master, what this is telling me, what this is kind of, I'm going to go a little meta here. It's telling me it's okay for a player to play a wizard. You can be a wizard in this game, but you have to be very careful about who you talk to about your wizardry talents and skills, You have to be very private about it, very secretive about it, and you can't use it to strike down normies. Okay, so I look at it like this. I know I look at it like a million different things. Gandalf was Shek-Pvar in the fact that he didn't mind telling people he was a wizard, but he doesn't share any of his knowledge. When they were fighting normies, he didn't use any of his magical abilities. But when they started fighting trolls, he would cast spells. They would when they were fighting the goblins or the wargs, he would cast spells, and the eagles and when the Balrog, that kind of stuff, he would use his magic. That's one reason why a lot of people say, well, he doesn't, use his magic. He doesn't, what kind of spells does he have? Nobody knows. Guess why? Because he's secretive and very private about it. But when he needed to, that's when he pulled out the stops and he shot his wad. But I can see where that would be very difficult for a player in a fantasy RPG unless your game master is throwing monsters at you all the time, right? Because in Harn, 99% of your opponents or the people you will be having to deal with are normies, right? You're going to have a knight versus a knight. If the wizard casts a spell at the other knight, he just brought shame to the wizard's college. But if that other knight is an ogre or a gargan orc or whatever, then he's probably okay, right? He would be okay. You get attacked by giant spiders, fireball, no problem. But if you get attacked by a bunch of bandits and then you start using your spells on them, you're now violating the Pavaric code. And so what I'm trying to say is, I know I'm getting around there. It would be fun to play a wizard because you have this additional, well, me personally. It would be fun for me to play a wizard because I would have all these additional restraints on me that I couldn't use my magic. And I have it in me to do a thing, and I would have to restrain myself. And I find that to be challenging, which is exactly why I play role-playing games, is for the challenge. Not because it's easy, right? You don't climb to the top of Mount Everest because it's easy. You don't go to the moon because it's easy. But on the flip side, I can see where that would be incredibly frustrating for the other players that are trying to get things accomplished in the normie world, and then they got this tag along who doesn't ever do anything unless they get attacked by a monster. So I don't know, it seems like it'd be interesting, but I think our players should probably try to avoid it. But on the other hand, it would be kind of cool to have a wizard in the party. I don't know. It's up to the players to decide. I'm not going to make that decision for them. I'm going to allow, and I think I'm only going to allow one. So if anybody wanted to be a Shek-Pvar, then we would have to have a fist fight or a Rochambeau or something to figure out who is going to get to play the wizard if there's two or more people that wanted to play a wizard. Same thing with the clerics. I don't think there should be two or more clerics in the party. because my game that I'm going to be running is going to be a knight-centric game. It's going to be the noble houses, politics, intrigue centric campaign. And so I think those might be useful at certain times, but I don't want to overwhelm the party by having like 5 clerics. I don't think I want that. Okay. Now, joining the Shek-Pvar, we already talked about that in the previous book. You pick a chantry style or difficulty, you roll. Convocation Mastery, we already know it's mostly aura. And then sun sign modifiers. All of this is the same that's in the 3rd edition book. And then we have pre-game skills. We already talked about that. You got the all, you got the Shek-Pvar, you got the optional skills, you got the spells. Now, the spell format. Here we go. And each one of the spell types, convocations, have their own like little logo, which is, that's cool, a little flavor text. Convocation, name, complexity level is the level of this spell. A description of the spell, bonus effects, because sometimes when you make your skill roll, if you roll critical success, something might happen, right? Some bonus thing might happen. Time, okay. It's almost always listed as a number of seconds minus your index. So having a higher skill index brings the amount of time down. Now, a skill index is your skill base, right? Your convocation skill base, not the mastery level, I don't think. Yeah, I think it's the, I'd have to double check, but I do believe it is your skill base divided by 10, right? So if you've got a skill base of 10, no, it's the mastery level. Yeah, it's the mastery level. Because if you've got a 70 in your skill mastery level, then your index is 7. So as you improve your skill and it gets better and better, your skill index would also increase and become better and better. Yeah, so it's not the skill base, it's the skill mastery level divided by 10 is your index. Okay, and then range. Usually the index has something to do with range as well. And it's usually listed in hexes, but it could also be listed in feet. But either way, remember, 1 hex is 5 feet. Simple. And then the duration. So when you actually go to cast a spell, you declare it. The character informs the game master of intent to cast a spell. He expends the necessary casting. Expends the necessary casting time and meets any other requirements. Okay, so expends the casting time. That's a game master thing. So his EML, I know they got a lot of abbreviations in this game, but basically they could have just used ML for everything because it is your convocation mastery level, your opening mastery level, your effective mastery level, your ritual mastery. It's all mastery level. So your mastery level is what you roll less than on percentile dice. Your effective mastery level is reduced by 5 for every level of the spell that you're casting. So my convocation skill is a single number. It's like 70. But I have a bunch of spells on my list that could range anywhere from level 1 to level 7. So if I'm trying to cast a higher level spell, it becomes harder to cast. And this is how they do it. It's the spell level times 5 is a negative modifier. It's success roll. You make the roll and then you get a success. And then here is your fatigue accumulation. If you get a critical success, there's no fatigue. So you just cast it. It was easy. But if you get a critical failure, then your fatigue goes up by 2. And now here's the tricky part. After casting a spell, fatigue received from the current casting is added to your total fatigue. A shock roll is required if the total accumulated fatigue is 3 or more. So once you get to 3 or more fatigue and you cast, once you get to 2 or more fatigue, well, it doesn't matter. At the end of casting a spell, if it hits 3 or more, you make a shock roll, which could cause you to pass out, right? Now, once you're done out of the fight, combat's over, you get 1 fatigue level back every 10 minutes. So you take a short rest for an hour, you get 6 fatigue back. Right, and then the description of what actually happens is under the spell. Misfire. Now remember that critical failure you just got? Now sometimes, okay, yeah, this is like the DM will roll this in secret because he doesn't want you to have control over your misfire. So what they're trying to say is sometimes an effect will be hidden and you won't know what the misfire, what it did to you. And so it's up to the game master to take a note of that. And then there's something called total release, the most devastating and dangerous variety of misfire. And then they give rules on learning spells. So there's various ways you can learn spells, and they talk about all that. We're not going to talk about all that. But basically there's scrolls and books and teachers and stuff like that. You can research something. So like if you're at a, like I said, that Chantry library and you're trying to learn a new spell, you can go through and learn it through research. And then you could also, believe it or not, you can invent your own spells. So you and your game master have to work together to decide what is a good spell. You'll write up a spell, and usually the game master will do a spell evaluation, and then he will decide how powerful that is and what level it should be. And usually he'll give you feedback saying, if you change this part of the spell, I'll make something else happen. Like instead of it being a level 7 spell, if you just change that one thing, I can make this a level 6 spell or level 5 spell or something. Basically, there's a little bit of a back and forth negotiation there. And this is where it talks about the GM player negotiation. Okay, we don't need to talk about all that. That's interesting. It's very cool that they have rules for that. And then there's attunement. So basically, they're talking about becoming attuned to more than one convocation. Okay. And then convocation mastery level development. That's basically over time and use, you can get skill rolls to improve your skills, just like falconry or just like any other skills. Then they have something called gray mages. A gray mage is a mage that has attuned to all 6 convocations, and they have every convocation and neutral magic at 81% or more. And then also completes the gray metamorphosis ritual. So basically, they are awesome. Okay. Super powerful. Okay. So let's talk about chantries. And let's talk about my campaign. I know this video has gone on a little while. I'm getting ready to end. We're not exactly done yet. But this is a list of chantries and their quality, with poor being 1 star and excellent being 5 star, just like those die rolls previously. When you look through this list, the number in Chantry indicates the appropriate number of resident masters. Most would have 2 or 3 times the number of resident students. Okay, so like if it says 8, they have 8 master wizards there teaching that convocation. And about, what do they say, about 3 times that number of students, so about 24 students at that chantry. Those students could range anywhere from brand new apprentice, just got there yesterday, all the way to I've been there for 60 years. There's about 100 chantries with less than 8 resident masters have been omitted. Okay, so now basically they're showing that there's a ton of chantries all over the world, not just Harn. Now remember, Harn is just an island. It's about twice the size of England, in the northwest coast of the mainland, Lithia. Right now, Lithia's got a ton of different kingdoms on it, and Harn has like 7 kingdoms on it. So when you go and so these chantries are spread out all across the world. So what I was trying to do as game master was locate a chantry that would be in or near where the players are, right? There are a number of chantries in the kingdom of Melderin. You'll notice that there is not one chantry located in Kaldor. That's where my campaign is beginning. That's where it's going to start, and it's going to be for a while. So as a wizard, you would not be, or if you were from Kaldor, you had to have gone to a chantry outside the kingdom to train, right? Now, you might have come back to the kingdom for whatever reason. Now, there is this one here called Guerin in Harn. It just says Harn, right? Well, Harn is the entire island. So what I did was I did an island search on their interactive map on their website. I typed in where is Guerin, and it showed me that it's in between Orbal, which is the Nordic kingdom, and Kaldor. It's just to the south of the Nordic kingdom. So that's the closest chantry. Now there are other chantries in Melderin. Melderin is in the very southern. So this spot right there, that was that chantry I was talking about. There are no chantries in Kaldor. And then Melderin is right here. So Melderin has a ton of chantries. This is where all the wizards are. And there are others in... There are a few in Retham. There's a few in Candé. There are a few over here, but this is like the closest one. I didn't see any others. The elves, they're right here, but they wouldn't be teaching wizardry to a non-elf or a Kandor, whatever, and a Kaldor, I mean. There might be other locations where there are. I just don't recognize all the names yet. So I couldn't find, but I couldn't find any. Now all the other ones were spread out across the world, where I saw that there was one in Shoju. There was one here, and there's one there, and here, and there, and there, and there. So there's chantries all over, but mostly on that island right there. Oh yeah, Ilvinia, they had some chantries. That's Scandinavia. They're the Nords that had invaded into Harn, which are right up there. And there is one right there. And then of course down there. That's where the evil gods basically rule. So as we go on, casting a spell, there's something called a cant. And you see the little asterisk, you see a little box there, meaning it's an optional rule, and there's a gesture, and there's detection. This is an optional rule. I'll tell you right now, I am using this optional rule because I believe in it strongly. A cant is like, think incant or incantation. So it's someone who's la 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 la, like Anal Nothrak Uthwas Bethud. Okay, that is a cant. And so they are casting, that is the words spoken when casting a spell. And they give a level of volume to it. So you could, if you do it in silence, like you're canting under your breath, like you're saying it like that, you would get a -10 to cast the spell. But no one would be able to hear you. And then, or you could be super loud where you're screaming at the top of your lungs this cant to the material world, and you would actually get a +5 to your cant or to your casting. But people would be able to hear you. That's a hearing times 7. So if I was running around with a hearing of 10 times 7, I'm rolling a 70% chance or less to hear you canting. Okay, so I love that. And then there's gesture. Guess what that is? It's moving your hands. What is it in D&D? We call it verbal. This would be the somatic portion of it, right? Where they've got to move your hands. You have no movement. Maybe your hands are tied behind your back. -10. But if you get whole body movement, like you're dancing around, you're moving, you're flowing with the magic, you get a +10. But detection-wise, people would see your movement because you're making some wild moves. So I times 7. And these are all the optional rules. We're still going on through various other optional rules. Now, memorization and grimoires. I'm not sure how I'm going to work this, but basically, you might have a book with your spells in it, right? A spell book. And there might be a memorization of, you're only allowed to memorize a certain number of levels of spells. And this is pretty high because they're saying it's your intelligence plus your aura plus your will, right? So if you have a 12, a 17, and a 9, your total will be 38. It's not an average, it's a total. So 38 levels is like a lot of spells, a lot of second or third level spells. You got a lot of them memorized. And remember that when you cast a spell, it doesn't disappear from your memory because it's burning fatigue. So you could cast the same spell over and over and over as long as you have fatigue to handle it. So you could cast the same, and then if you cast a spell, wait 10 minutes, cast a spell, wait 10 minutes, cast a spell, wait 10 minutes, you're never going to have a problem. So it could be, you can have an infinite number of spells cast in a day, but you can only memorize a certain quantity of spells as in your brain. And then there's the grimoire, contains spells, and then there's astrological timing. So different spells on different days and different sun signs would be cast with more modifiers and stuff, I think I don't want to use that. It just seems like it's more complexity than it's worth. And I'm not going to do the individual spell skills either. I'm not going to say you got a spell skill for disarm or dispel, and then you got another spell for bless, and then another spell for fireball. No, it's your convocation spell, and then you get a -5 per level of the spell. Makes it easy, so we're not going to be using that. Okay, so here's the spells. And we're not going to go over all of them, just so you can kind of see what a spell format would look like. I'm going to just get out of the neutral spells, and I'm just going to pick Jamorvi, right? Okay, and we're going to the Sight of Eneldir. That's a level 1 spell. Right? A spell to detect and identify metallic minerals. He declares a metallic mineral. He learns the direction of the nearest single good source within his index times 500 feet. So remember, if your index is 7, it's 3,500 feet. Now, with a critical success, you'll learn the distance, not just the direction. And a good source can be at the GM's discretion. But this is usually people that are like blacksmiths and they need a certain type of ore, like iron or something. And so they would say, is there any good iron in this area? And they cast a spell and tell them. Now, if your mastery level is 70 or better, you can narrow the direction of the search such as to ignore everything behind the caster. Now, what is this here? A large deposit of ore 100 yards away, although the spell ignores any focus through which it is cast. So like if you have a rod, it's not going to say that rod is a good source. It may detect a companion's sword. So it's kind of like locate object. You could say, like if somebody lost a golden ring, you could say, where's a good source of golden ring? Well, it's going to give you a 360 unless you've got a 70 or better. And then you could say in that river or, across that bridge. And you can use it more than once to determine the size of a nearby person's money purse. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's go to another. Okay. Viveria. So Balm of Grecian. This is also a level 1 spell. Allows the person or animal touched by the caster to heal faster. Can be used once per injury. The effect is immediately provide 1 healing roll. So you apply the salve, the balm, the bandage, and then boom. Depending on your skill, you might be able to heal infected wounds. If you got an 80 or better, you can restore a blood point, which I'm not using blood points. And if you have a 90 or better, this is not a roll. This is your skill level. No longer requires range. Wait, touch no longer required. Range is your index in hexes. So 5 feet times your index. So if you got an index of 7, 35 feet. And then there's the casting time. And it basically allows 1 healing roll per injury. And I've noticed that some clerical spells say something similar, but I think what they're implying is that they apply to actually only 1 injury. I was thinking I could just do it over and over and over, but I think it allows once and then it's already had a spell cast on it. You can't do it again. Let's go to something that's a little bit higher level. Let's do like Death of Devu, right? Causes a cone of cold air. Nice. Remember, this is level 3. The affected area is a 60-degree cone. The frost impact of the blast is determined by distance. The following table shows the frost impact and with marginal success. Add a d6 with critical success. It's based on your index in hexes or divided by 2 or whatever. So let's say you've got an index of 10, right? No, it wouldn't be 10. Let's say 7 because you got a 70 skill, right? So you get an index of 7. So short range would be 3 hexes or 4 hexes, right? Because it's 7 divided by 2. You could actually just take 35 feet, divide it by 2, and make it, what is that, 17 and a half feet or something like that. You could do that. Or you could go in division, like hexes. If you get a half a hex, it counts as a 1 because you round off in this game. So if it's 0.5, it's the next highest whole number. Okay, so medium would be 7 hexes, and then long would be 14 hexes. And what that means is if it is at long range, your impact is your 7, which is the index, plus 1d6. But if it's close range, it's 7 plus 3d6. So the closer it is, the more it impacts something. Now this says cone of cold. So is this, frost impact. Okay, so it would affect the fire frost portion of your armor. The effect, right, is achieved by using ethereal ice to rapidly condense atmospheric moisture, blah, blah, blah. Bonus effect, none. Okay, it doesn't say it rolls to hit. Let me look at the example here. A caster with Odivishi, index of 8, has an effective range of short is 1 to 4, medium is 5 to 8, and long is 9 to 16 hexes, achieving marginal success on a target at range 5 hexes, that would be medium, gives frost impact of 8 plus 2d6, or 8 plus 3d6 with critical success because you add that extra d6. The impact applies to 1d6 randomly generated body parts. What did I do? Okay, so they don't get a save, they don't get a defense. It just applies, it just hits them. You roll a d6, and then that's how many body parts you hit. And so you could actually cause a lot of injuries, right? You could cause an injury to his head, his face, his neck, his chest, his shoulders, his abdomen, okay? So you could hit, I mean, if you rolled really good, you smack him in 6 different locations, and most people have a frost resistant of around, I don't know, 3 or 4 maybe. And so if you could kill somebody, is what I'm trying to say. You could just put them out in one hit. Boof. But then again, you're a wizard, and that is a human, so you wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to do that on monsters. If you did that on a human, think of it like casting a fireball on somebody. You might become a renegade. Okay, now guys, if you've never used the Harn map on the Columbia website, this is it, and I basically put it as a shortcut, so I just click it and it opens, so I don't have to constantly go to the website, just like you normally do. Every one of these blue dots is referencing something in some Harn book, right? So if you wanted to know about this location, you click it, it tells you about that location. If you want to know, or you could zoom in. Okay. That's the most you can zoom in. But let's go down to Caldor. Like this is Caldor, and you can see all these little blue pins. Every one of those is something that if you are curious to know what that's all about, you can just click it. Like let's look at this Tonturi Lake. You click here, it tells you a little bit about it. If they have a hyperlink on the top right there, you can click that. It'll take you to the Columbia Games website and the product that actually gives more information about that. I think that's pretty cool. You know, this is a pretty pretty good reference for players because it doesn't give you all the information, but does give you quite a bit of information. And so, like, if you're interested to know about this right here, it talks about a colony of Gargu on the eastern edge of the Felicia Mountains. Felicia. Yeah, I'm going to start calling it Felicia. The surrounding region is often swarming with miscellaneous Gargan bands. That's pretty cool. And then this is something I read earlier today. The Mian Lake, right? A deep lake, but most importantly, the waters are murky and very cold and are said to harbor a sea dragon called Mene. That's pretty cool. I only brought that up because I wanted something on the screen when I told you I was done. But basically, in summary, this video is extremely long, but in summary, wizards are cool but restricted. And so it's not your father's D&D game, right? You're not going to go into some place and cast fireballs, casting sleep, and all that stuff. But on the flip side, you can cast all your spells all the time as long as you got fatigue to deal with it, and as long as you rest or recuperate between. If your skill level is high enough, you'll get more chances to get critical success and not have any fatigue, right? So, yeah, I'm digging the magic. Yeah, I dig it. It's very similar to the clerics. I dig the way the clerics are done. I dig the way the wizards are done. I love the role playing aspect of the wizards and how they. I'm going to do it rules as written. Basically, I'm going to allow one wizard in the party, one cleric in the party, if the players want that. It is totally not necessary because it's going to be a knight noble centric campaign. As a cleric, you can be a noble and also be a cleric. You can also be a knight that's part of a fighting order for the clergy, which might mean that you would have some rituals that you might know. So, like a D&D paladin. Or you could just be a straight up knight, or you could be a straight up wizard. If one of my players decides he wants to be a wizard, we're going to have to figure out what chantry he joined, and it would have to be a foreign chantry. Well, it doesn't have to be, but or I'd have to create a chantry in Caldor. But there's a reason why Caldor doesn't have any chantries, and that's because they're very anti-magic. So if you're a wizard coming into my campaign, you're going to be maybe it's going to be hard for you to get involved in the politics and the game's going to be a lot of court intrigue, espionage. delivering messages, trying to figure out what the messages actually mean, etc., etc. A wizard might be good for that if they can like see through people's lies or whatever. But but that's one reason why Caldor doesn't like wizards, is because they have a lot of that going on, a lot of the intrigue. So yeah, so I don't know. It's players basically putting a um, putting handcuffs on to play my game, and then after they play for a couple of sessions, they go, "Man, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore," and then they quit. And so that is a fear of mine, that someone's gonna think it's cool to be a wizard and then wind up realizing it's not really gonna be cool. But in but overall in Harn, I think wizards are cool. And I think they could fit very easily in a different style of campaign. Just my campaign, maybe not so much. But I'm going to allow it. If somebody wants to be a wizard, that's going to be cool for me. We'll figure out a way to get him to work in. He might even be a noble. I don't even know. Okay. Thanks for coming out and checking out this video. If you guys are looking for miniatures, be sure to hit Wargaming and Miniatures on eBay right there. And don't forget, I have an upcoming interview with Grant sometime in the future. Stay tuned to the channel. Maybe if you like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. If I go live, you might be notified that you can jump on and maybe drop some questions on him. If you want me to ask him any specific questions, put them in the chat. I read the chat. All right. I'll catch you next time.